Welcome back to the verbose mode by Toxcare here at Spring Isle 2025. And now we will turn on the verbose mode with Leif. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And that's not first time we meet, but it's definitely the first time on the verbose mode.
Yep.
Today is officially the second day that this interview program exists. So very early and fresh, and thank you for joining us in our inaugural event.
Thanks for having me.
And so the topic of the discussion is full stack development, and your amazing t-shirt with the deer, right, kind of implies that Vaadin is somehow involved in the mix.
Yeah, Vaadin is involved. I mean, I work for Vaadin, but at the same time, I think full stack development, it's bigger than just Vaadin.
Let's start with what Vaadin is.
Yeah, so Vaadin is a web framework. It lets you build web applications that work like any modern web application, but the key thing is that the development is using only server-side Java. So you don't need to touch any JavaScript, any CSS, anything like that if you don't want to.
We've been there before. That's not the first attempt to do something like that, including stuff like Java server faces and what's not. I think JavaFX even is kind of a part of the mix, more or less.
Well, running that on the web is a little bit complicated.
But
in principle, yes.
Yeah. So how Vaadin is different?
Well, we're different. I mean, with JSF, for instance, you got markup and Java, and then you need to kind of combine them together, and that's usually complicated. Whereas we go with pure only Java, which means that you don't need any magic strings to connect this part of the markup to this part of your Java logic, but it's actually everything just Java.
Everything just Java. And here's my question. There is obviously, the entire world of frontend, large and complicated and massive, is there to express tons of different nuances that we have in front-end development. And as the time progresses and the user demand is going up and up, people want more and more stuff from their front-end. And obviously, back-end development is different. It has complexity of its own, but it's kind of, the complexity is elsewhere. How do you bridge this gap? How do you make Java expressive and powerful enough to do everything that a modern front end requires?
I think it's the same solution as with the backend, because what you really need to have is abstractions over things. With backend today in Java, you typically don't write SQL. You use something like Duke or JPA or something that is higher abstraction level. It gives you all the defaults automatically. And it's exactly the same with web also, that Vaadin is able to give you kind of a data grid. Just one line of code to create a grid component, one line of code to say, this is the Spring service that we fetch data from, and that's all you need to have this kind of lazy loading table of data in the browser. So it's all about the abstractions.
It brings even more memories like Flex and Flash and this kind of stuff, which was also very easy to create. But as with abstractions, and we spoke earlier today about abstractions in Spring, in the end of the day, you end up hitting this zone in which the abstraction limits you more than it helps you. So you have this table, it was very easy to create, but this is like the default table.
Yep.
But now you want some kind of bells and whistles that are not existent in the default table, and front end with their tools allow you to customize this table as heavily as you like, but with frameworks that you express in Java, maybe you just don't have the tools to customize this table to the level that you want.
Well, in my experience, you typically have that because, our grid class, it's 1,000 lines long at least, and that's mostly just the API because the implementation is then JavaScript that you don't need to touch. But also beyond that, because we are kind of we are still enabling the web for you. So whenever you need, you can just from server-side Java say, I want to run this JavaScript snippet also. You don't have to do that, but you have the option, and that gives you all the possibilities to customize whatever you want when you need it.
Yeah, I think that's what I was curious about. Where can you step in and say, well, framework gave me everything it could, but here I need to do something else.
Yeah. So that's everywhere, but at the same time, then you are a lower level of abstraction, so you're not as productive. But when you need it, then you need it. But then for all the basic stuff, when you can just what's already there out of the box is good enough, then you don't need to do that low level stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was kind of my point, which kind of brings me back to the larger question. So in the same kind of vein, the idea that full stack development is eventually about compromise in one of the parts.
Yeah.
You either have more powerful front end and then back end adjust to that, or you have more powerful back end and then front end adjust to that.
Yeah.
Is this statement true?
It's definitely true. I mean, it's like in all architecture, you always need to see kind of what are the trade-offs, what are the important things. Do I prioritize developer productivity over expressiveness, for instance, and then you choose your approach based on that. But there's no silver bullet. That's for sure.
Yeah, and in general, like full stack is a lie. There is a part which is more powerful, more that you start with, and then the other kind of adjust to that. They are not equal.
But at the same time, I mean, it's the same as with all the trade-offs. I mean, assembly is more powerful than C. But true. Most people, if they have to choose between those two, they choose C, and then C is more powerful than Java, but people still choose Java, and it's all the same thing.
It's funny how almost every conversation today, as I started my day with my talk about levels of abstraction. And now every conversation that we here at Verbose Mode, we end up discussing going up and up about level of abstraction.
Yeah.
And now prompting is our new level of abstraction over everything else.
Yep.
So tell me, when you compare those approaches to front-end development with the front-end and center and back-end Node.js, or basically, again, expressing backend in JavaScript in front-end means, or the other way around, when you start with very powerful backend and then adjust front and then use backend means for front-end, what makes more sense for you?
I mean, I'm biased. I'm very, very biased. So for me, of course, the backend approach makes more sense. At the same time, I think this is a question where it's more about individual developers and kind of team play and so on, because what a full stack approach really gives you is the possibility of one team owning the whole experience. That can be full stack like Next.js that you mentioned, where you have the front end and the back end in JavaScript, but it's still the single team building the whole experience. And you can do the same also with Java-based full stack. And I think that's in many cases, that's even more important than the kind of technical bits and pieces. It's much more about kind of these empowered teams that can get everything done. It's full stack, it's DevOps, it's kind of mastering the database in the team. It doesn't have to be so that each developer is an expert in all of those, but at the very least so that the team as a whole, they can deliver on all these fronts.
So it's more important to have any type of full stack than what the type exactly is.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah. No, that's that makes sense, and I think it's a general empowered teams. It's a general trend that we see, right?
Yep.
And it's a change for the better. The only problem then is obviously the expertise, right? Yep. Because when we have specialized teams, they are deep specialization, which is great. How do you overcome this? Hey, now suddenly I need to do work for everybody, for the front end, for the back end, for the ops people, for security, etc., etc. How do I even manage to do all the work for everybody else?
Yeah. Then we're looping back to where we started. It's the abstractions. Because I mean, it's a little bit of abstractions, and it's all about the tooling. So especially I think in the DevOps space, there's lots of tooling to help you do this and that. And it's quite the same also, for instance, what Vaadin provides for full stack development. That's also, it's a tool that helps you get more done without having to learn the whole stack, but you can kind of, with less knowledge in that space and more space in your brain for all the other parts that you also need to master.
Funny enough, it's true for TuxCare as well.
Okay.
Because we provide those tools for security, for supply chain, and make sure that your libraries are patched with the latest versions of all the security vulnerabilities, which is also allows you to do more without getting into the weed of security, which is very, very complicated.
Yeah, and that's getting more and more important also with kind of news reports about about all kinds of interesting things.
Yeah, I just mentioned it in my talk this morning about how LLM hallucinates constantly new packages that do not exist, and then people quoting those names in NPM registry and providing malicious packages that will be successfully resolved when code written by LLMs is run.
Yeah, and I guess that's, okay, you need to have a lockdown repository. There's no other protection.
Absolutely, which brings me to JFrog Artifactory and what's not down the memory lane. Everything is connected. Most of the stuff that we're talking about is about developer productivity. With all the layoffs, obviously the survivors need to do more with less and not get burned out with that, and this is where tools like Vaadin, TuxCare, and JFrog Artifactory can definitely help.
Yep.
Leif, that was a pleasure. Thank you very much. And you all stay tuned for more episodes of Verbose Mode today here at Spring IO, and see you soon.